So today we're going to talk about how to focus, make wise decisions, increase team engagement in stressful times. So first I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story. So my dad was an orthodontist and he practiced in High Point. So one time I was at Chapel Hill, I was a senior and we had dinner together. And so my mom was downstairs. I was with my dad upstairs in the condo and he was sitting in my bedroom and we were looking at each other. And I said, "Dad, what's going on? You don't seem the same. You don't seem yourself, your normal self." And he looked at me and looked directly into my eyes and he said, "Audie, I just can't handle the stress. I can't handle the stress anymore." And he drove home that night from Chapel Hill to High Point, went upstairs to sleep it off as he would normally do. He never missed a day in his practice, had a massive heart attack and died that night. So I don't want that tragedy to happen to any other member of the dental family like it did to ours. We had a lot of crisis trying to figure out how to sell the practice, what to do, how are we going to, keep this thing viable, for patients that could otherwise leave because the practitioner was not there. And then again, another crisis that I experienced later on in life during the financial crisis. I had a commercial real estate firm and it was doing very well. I was number one in the category that I had. I had 89% market share. And then what happened was financial crisis hit. So we lost, a lot of our properties that we were, not getting the income stream off of and commissions and everything. And so I know what it's like to be in crisis because after that, I changed, I remade myself. I was actually the president of the High Point Commercial Alliance at the time. So after that, I went to Bank of America and helped other families that were going through financial hardship to be able to not foreclose, but to modify their homes and avoid foreclosure and save their homes. About 2,200 different families that we served as our team there in Charlotte, North Carolina with Bank of America. So I know what it's like to be in a crisis like this, and I can empathize a lot with everyone that's understanding that there's so much uncertainty. And today's agenda, what we're going to talk about is first, reframing your mindset. How do you reframe your mindset whenever there is so much uncertainty out there? How do you reduce that stress that we all feel so that it doesn't become something that's toxic to our bodies or to our relationships? The one thing, new way of thinking. I'm going to offer this as a new way of thinking. It's just a totally different way of thinking that I think you're going to enjoy. And next is, what next actions should I take? What could I do to be able to prepare whenever the quarantine comes down or whenever we're ramping back up with our practice or even rebounding out of that to be able to thrive for my future? So what's on your mind? Well, I talked to a lot of practitioners, many dentists, state executive directors, different people that handle the programs and things like that, people at the universities, at the dental schools. And this is what people have told me. My clients, all of them have said this: what will happen to me, my family, my staff, and my practice? This is what you're telling me. There's so many options and they're not easy to understand, okay? Pressure to make the right decision or the money goes away. That's really stressful. We've seen that just happen recently. The other tasks that I need to complete right now, like maybe even right now that you're thinking, oh my gosh, I forgot about this. I need to check on my PPP. I need to see, when do I need to take the money? Did I get the loan? Which one should I sign up for? How do we do unemployment for my staff? All those different questions that you're asking yourself. There's so much of that going on right now. I'd like for you to maybe pause this video, grab a piece of paper and a pen, or maybe an iPad, whatever you like to take notes on, and just write down things as it comes to mind so that you can be present and fully participate in what we're talking about. And as well, I'd like to offer you this, is think in terms of teaching this. Don't think of this and just kind of consuming it and being more passive about listening, but I want you to be active as almost a workshop and say, okay, the principles that I'm learning here, the laws of extraordinary success, how can I implement these and share these with other people, either my staff, my spouse, maybe a mentor, other people that are in your colleagues or peers? Because what that will help you do is learn from a different perspective to learn to teach whatever you're learning now, which will actually help you to integrate it better and learn it better than you would otherwise if you were just listening for yourself. So try to learn for two. Maybe what are my priorities right now? What really should I be focused on? Not being clear. I know that right now many of the practices are shut down, and so you're probably wearing your CEO or your admin hat, 98% of the time, and then doing maybe dental emergencies, or maybe you've been able to open up, who knows, but what are those priorities that I need to be focused on? We're going to talk about that. And can I just follow someone else's action plan? Do I have to figure this all out? This is not what I signed up for, right? How do I just implement what somebody else is doing? That's what I really want to do. And so as a result of this, there's fear, worry, stress, maybe even some paralysis of analysis, trying to determine all the best paths to go there. And you're just concerned about not making the wrong decision. The reason I say that is you can get incomplete information with what's out there because it changes daily. And I had one of my clients that said, hey, you know, had my people, you know, laid off so they could get unemployment and they could be taken care of. And then lo and behold, they denied her unemployment. And it was like, I didn't understand this. Somebody said that they could work partially, you know, and keep going with certain things, but that was negated with the unemployment. So maybe you'll make a bad decision, a wrong decision. And then what else? What else are you thinking about? Go ahead and write that down. I want you to go ahead and take notes on what it is that you're thinking about as we go through this, because like I said, I want this to be a workshop for you that you can teach it to help someone else as well. So maybe you've seen this before, but this is reframing your mindset as well. So on the vertical axis, we had the demand for dental services. On the horizontal axis, we had time. Okay, so we've got vertical dental services and then time. The challenge is we don't know what time is right now. That's an unknown, because what we had was before coronavirus, we had BC, COVID-19, then all of a sudden the normal demand, you can see that demand line, the demand just crashed, right? And then we're down now in this period of hibernation, possibly getting ready to go up and have the quarantine lifted in some of the states, depending on what the governors say. And then there'll be a patient rush starting to happen. And then there'll be a surge where in the surge, like it says below here, patient's demand exceeds a patient's ability, the patient demand exceeds a practice's ability to satisfy the need with normal working hours, staffing levels, okay? And so we have to staff up to be able to serve those patients sooner. That's the road to recovery by Dental Post. So that's that surge. And then at some level, it will come back to some level of normal dental services that are required. So let's take a mind shift for a second to what the new opportunity looks like right now. So there's 8,000 dentists in dental intelligence software database and 87 million patients pre-coronavirus. Okay, this is before anything happened and the shutdown all happened. And these are the data that they had. I interviewed the CEO and he basically was telling me, Weston Lunsford, what was happening and what they were seeing. So 44% of those patients were unscheduled pre-coronavirus. That's 38.28 million patients. So if you did the math, that would be an additional 3.8 additional chairs for 6 months to address the pre-coronavirus demand, okay? So every 10 to 14 seconds now, someone goes to the ER for a dental emergency that could be handled in a dental practice. So there's still the demand. And so whenever that pent-up demand happens, we're gonna have that huge surge that we're talking about. So the reality is really, we're not gonna be able to see all of our patients in the next 12 months post-coronavirus. After that, you know, everything gets back to normal, if you will, after that. This was that interview last week with Weston Lunsford, CEO of Dental Intel. So your vision, okay, maybe pre-coronavirus, you had this vision of, like one of my clients said, you know, I want to retire in 2 years. Okay, that's my goal. Okay, another one of my clients, you know, they were looking at a lifestyle that was different. And so they were focused on having additional income streams. Okay, maybe you've got real estate, maybe there's other things, but it's all impacting what your vision for your personal life looks like, and also the vision for your practice. I was in a forum and there was a 30-year-old and he said, I'm gonna have to move in with my parents because I'm not gonna be able to afford this. So that's the only way I'm gonna keep my practice going. So maybe that's what's going on, but maybe you're somewhere in between. You know, you could be an associate working for someone else that you've been furloughed, or maybe you're somewhere on the other side that you're looking to sell your practice and transition into another stage of life. So no one size fits all. Once you've seen one solution, you've only seen one solution. Okay, so no one size fits all for all of this. So your goal, I'm just going to use this as an example, by whatever date, say May 31st or May 1st or June or whatever, by whatever date that you so choose, and that's not important, you'll figure that out whenever the timing is right, but start thinking about that, but we don't need to stress about it now. You're going to rebuild your practice to safely serve however many patients that you want, needs per month, at the highest level profitably, okay, for the benefit of all, to transform your community's lives, okay? Let's say that was your goal. Again, no one size fits all, but I'm just saying if that was your goal. This is what we're going to how do I reach that goal? But first you have to define what that goal looks like, okay? Does that make sense? And so your priorities might be just this: to be able to rebound after coronavirus, after the quarantine is lifted. One is your ability to focus. Right now, how do I focus on what I'm doing? Okay. What do I need to be focused on? And then how do I make wise decisions? How do I make those wise decisions so I don't make a bad decision and then have the consequences like my client that said, they were denied their unemployment. Then finally, do right by myself, my family, my practice, and my staff. I know you care. I know that my dad cared about his staff. I know that you care about keeping them and their families going as well as your own family. So how do I do that? What do I do? Well, next I'd like to say that the goal for this webinar is this: to show you that focusing on your one thing is the key to rebound quickly, as well as a more fulfilling life with less stress for you and your whole team. And the only way to do that is by embracing the one thing new way of thinking. The only way to do that is embracing the new one thing way of thinking. What is the one thing? Okay. So first of all, I'd like for you to listen to this. It's just a minute and 24 seconds. So it's very short, but I'd like for you to think in terms of this and maybe write some things down on those pages that you've got, pieces of paper, of what lights you up. What is that vision that you're catching and hearing? Because maybe sometimes you're not in that place of thinking in terms of what my vision is for my future. That might not be something that you like to do. And so just be starting to think about, what do I want to do? What if coronavirus was beside of us now, what do I want my practice to look like? What do I want my life to look like? So this is exciting because I think it's something that you'll get excited about. I know my dad would have with his work and his practice, because he was an avid follower of many things that were self-help, and Zig Ziglar, he gave me a love for that, and Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. So my dad was a big consumer of this kind of information. It's why I'm passionate about serving you with it. So this is the one thing.
We want more. We want more from our work. We want our personal and family life to be satisfying. We want spectacular success at it all. And at the same time, we want less. The daily barrage of emails, texts, tweets, messages, and meetings distract and stress us. The idea of the one thing is of being single-minded, acquiring a one-track mind, becoming a one-trick pony. In The One Thing, New York Times best-selling authors Gary Keller and Jay Papasan present the lies that block your success and how to identify and stop the thieves that steal your time and your life. They model the laws of purpose, priority, and productivity. And finally, they teach you how the one thing can radically change the way you work, the choices you make, and the results you get. Sometimes it's the first thing you do. Sometimes it's the only thing you do. But it's always the one thing that delivers extraordinary results. What's your one thing?
So what did you like about that? I love the simplicity behind it. I love that it's a simple solution that helps you do less and get more. That's exciting. So if you want to know about the 5 years worth of research that was done to complete this book on all the different reference points and validation of these laws of extraordinary success, please reach out to me, audie@ourworldpeace.org. Feel free to do that, and I'll be happy to send you the link with all the details of the research that was done on the book. But basically, if you think about a law of success, you think of any of the universal laws, it's going to apply no matter what. Like the law of gravity, that's a great example. The law of gravity is, it applies in Australia or the United States or Japan or China or wherever. It applies universally. And that's what was determined in writing this book. And for it to become such a bestseller in all these different countries, it is universal. So I think you're going to enjoy seeing what I'm teaching and training with you, because that's what I'm licensed to train and teach. And so first we're going to talk about, in our first session, the law number one. Law number one is how the 80-20 principle will help you focus during a crisis. How the 80-20 principle will help you focus during a crisis. And the author of the book, co-author actually, Gary Keller, wrote The One Thing with Jay Papasan. his big aha was this. He said, where I had huge success, I had narrowed my concentration to one thing. Where my success varied, my focus had too. Now, feel free to take pictures of this, screenshots, whatever. I'll have the notes on this that you can have later. But where I'd had huge success, I had narrowed my concentration to one thing. And where my success varied, my focus had too. Let me tell you a little story about Gary. So he had just a few people reporting to him, about 6 in his real estate office. And he was asking them the question before each of the team huddles, which I know you guys have team huddles as well. He was asking, what are they going to be the top 5 things that you're going to do? Okay. And so everybody would write down their 5 top things. And then the next huddle, Gary was all excited and he'd say, okay, how did you do? How did you do on those top 5 things that were going to be the big rocks, if you will, to be able to help our organization to be the best that they could be, that we can be? Okay. Just 6 people that that are reporting to him. And so what happens is they said, well, Gary, I did number 5, number 4, number 3. He said, what about number 1? What about the number 1 priority? And so he said, maybe it's too much. So he went down to 3. Okay, so only 3 things that they had to do before the next team huddle. Okay, obviously they had other things that they had to do within the real estate firm, but these were just 3 things that would be transformational for the organization. And then he was finding that they didn't do those either. And he got frustrated. He said, well, what about just the one thing? What is the one thing that we can do that will make our company to be the best in the world? Okay, and that's ultimately what happened. He kept asking that question. And they were coming back with just completed yes or no on that one thing. And if you don't know it, Gary Keller was the co-founder also of Keller Williams Realty. And the thing that's going to be exciting to you is it's the largest real estate company in the world with the most number of agents. It has the greatest number of transactions and also the biggest dollar of transactions in the world. Okay. And the cool thing about it is Indeed.com, which is a website that employees can report what their experience is in working for an organization. It was given, Keller Williams Realty was given the award for number 1 in work-life balance and number 1 in team culture. So those were the 2 big awards that they were given for the United States. It's also the number 1 training company because Gary Keller used education to help everybody be better. So these principles work. So I want you to know that it's not just things that have been validated from scientific research and data with 3 different research points to be able to validate that it's a law, but this actually works in practice as well. So this is one of my clients, David Jones. I think you guys are going to appreciate this. He came to me and he said this. He said this was his vision. So I talked about vision earlier and I said, sometimes we don't have a clear picture of what we want. Well, David had a clear picture, but it was a very simple vision. He said, you know what? I want the last half, the twilight years of my life, the twilight years to be better than the first half. That was his vision. And he said, I want to retire in 2 years. So I worked with him during a workshop. We worked backwards and reverse engineered how to get him to a place so that he could retire. And this is what he said. You can see a picture of him. This is one of his Facebook pictures that I just pulled several months ago. I was looking only recently and he was at the beach. So he literally travels around the world doing what he wanted to do with his wife. They do missions work. He does advanced photography courses like in China, Shanghai, and obviously during COVID, he's not traveling as much, but he's at the beach with his wife and his family. He's been able to bridge a relationship with a family member that was estranged. And he said this about the one thing. He said, the one thing helped me to do a lot of good things, but to do the best things. I learned how to optimally prioritize my schedule and transform my business to fulfill more of my life's purpose. I'm excited about having more impact, contribution, and fulfillment with the people I love and the causes I support. And that's what he's doing now. So ask yourself this. What's not working at the level that I want? What's not working at the level that I want? Write it down on the piece of paper that you've got, okay? Another way to ask this, what am I dreading doing going into the practice? What am I dreading doing right now? So write that down because we're going to create a list of items that you can actually, we're going to help you focus and prioritize what those are here in just a second with an exercise. So how do you remain focused? How do you remain focused? We all, feel like we don't have enough time, right? And we know that all the things are never going to get done. It just never will happen. So how do you remain focused? It's a new way and it's a better way, okay? It's about going small. And this is Gary Keller. He said, going small is ignoring all the things that you could do and doing what you should do. It's realizing that extraordinary results are directly determined by how narrow you can make your focus. Let me read that again. Read that with me. Going small is ignoring all the things you could do and doing what you should do. It's realizing that extraordinary results are directly determined by how narrow you can make your focus. Are you getting this? You're getting this? This is a totally different way of thinking. We always thought if I could just do more, if I could do more, if I could go faster, if I could do harder, if I could work more hours, if I could, love better, all these things, these ERs, okay? How to do more, work harder, better, smarter, faster. That's what we usually think of how to be successful, but it's really directly determined by how narrow you can make your focus. And that's what we're going to talk about. So if we're talking about a universal principle or law of the universe, then something that's going to be in productivity and in our lives that we're going to see, how to have a more fulfilling life, we're going to also see that in physics, right? And this was what happens. There's something called the domino effect. Now, the domino effect is where one small domino, 2-inch domino, can knock down several dominoes that are lined up in sequence, and it will keep going infinitely until the dominoes run out, okay? And there's a lot of power that's pinned up in just those small little dominoes, knocking down each of the other domino. But there's also something called a geometric domino progression. That's when a 2-inch domino can knock down a domino that's 50% larger. So a 2-inch domino can knock down a 3-inch domino, and so on, and so on, and so on, as you see in the picture. So my question for you is, what happens after that happens 57 times? I'd like for you to just maybe note that, and you'll see the power of what this is. And I'll kind of make a good connection on what this looks like for your life. And so you've got a 2-inch domino over here on the left. That's the height. And then the domino number of how many times it's knocked down another domino with a geometric progression. By the time it hits 18 dominoes being knocked down, it's a domino the size of the Leaning Tower of Pisa. By the time it gets 23 times being knocked down, that domino grows to the size of the Eiffel Tower. By the time you get to 31 dominoes that are growing by 50%, you've gotten taller, 3,000 feet taller than Mount Everest. And by the time you get to 57, you've ramped up to where you're almost to the moon, almost to the moon. Now, why didn't we say 58? Well, because you're going to be somewhere out in outer space, okay? So we can't logically think that. But you think about, well, why does this matter, Audie? Who cares, okay? That's neat. That's a neat trick, but I'm not really growing dominoes, right? Okay, so what I'd like for you to think of, just like David did, I want the twilight years of my life to be better than the first half. Okay, so that was his moonshot. That was his moonshot. So he worked backwards and he said, okay, now what's the first 2-inch domino, the lead domino that I just need to tick to knock down to start this dominoes in progression? And we worked backwards. We reverse engineered his life for that 2-year period for him to retire. And that's what he did. Even though there were challenges within that period that were different than he'd even foresaw, just like the coronavirus is doing to all of us now, because there were some financial issues because of Sarbanes-Oxley that he had to deal with that could have been disruptive to what his goal was, okay? But he was able to overcome those and stay focused on what his real intention and goal was, his outcome. So let's keep going. Extraordinary success is sequential. It's not simultaneous. Extraordinary success is sequential. It's not simultaneous. So that means the key is over time, success is built sequentially, meaning just like those dominoes, one tick at a time. Because think about it. If you tried to run and knock down the Leaning Tower of Pisa, you'd either hurt yourself or maybe even kill yourself, but you'd certainly hurt yourself badly if you tried to knock it down. But the 2-inch domino 18 times before that is just a little tick, and then it starts moving, that progression going. So it's one thing at a time. So what's the 80-20 principle? Okay, that's one of the things that we talked about. How do we make that work for us? That's what we're doing in session 1. So it's basically where 20% of your effort results in 80% of whatever that outcome is. Okay, so for example, in your practice, and I know you're going to say, yeah, this is true, 20% of your patients are giving you approximately 80% of your revenue, of your income, of the profits, whatever that looks like, 20% and 80. Now, it might not be perfectly those numbers, okay, but it's pretty close, okay? And sometimes it could be even 20% to 90% or 10% to 90% or whatever, but it just says predominantly that 80-20 says the minority of your effort leads to the majority of your results, okay? So that's the important thing. So what does that have to do with what I'm doing in my day in, day out exercises, Audie, what I'm doing here, while I'm during the quarantine or rebounding in my practice or trying to thrive or looking to retire or create this outcome in my life that I want, this success that I want. Well, how many of you have a to-do list? I know I had a to-do list. Even in college, I started doing it. I remember I had even to-do lists in high school that were pretty simple, but I started getting the sophisticated stuff like day timers and Covey planners and 7 Habits, the whole 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Tony Robbins, all the different planners that were out there, David Allen. I would try everything because the to-do list became such a frustration because I would have this huge list and then all of a sudden I just want to throw it away because it got so big because it just kept accumulating over days and days and days. And then it was like, okay, this is ridiculous. I'm going to start another program because this doesn't work. Okay. And I'd get frustrated and I'd just throw the list away, or I'd pack it into a box somewhere. And I've got those boxes, I'm sure, down in my mom's basement from whenever I came back from college. So what it is you put down all the things that you could do, right? And then you highlight the things that you should do. Okay. Whether you put an asterisk by it, that's what I do. Just a little asterisk. I put a dash of all the things I could do, and I put an asterisk by what I should do. And then I number those things that have asterisks beside them. Okay. That's the way I do a success list. This is done so that you can see it. So all the things you could do, the things that you should do, you put them over, then you number them. So a to-do list becomes a success list when you prioritize it. Okay. So this is the way you prioritize it. Somebody might ask, well, how do I prioritize all my to-do items? You ask this. This is what I ask my clients after every session, that I say, okay, what's our action list? What's our success list? And they say, okay, I've got all these things. And then I said, okay, now based on this priority of answering this sentence, what's the one thing I can do such that by doing it, everything else will be easier or unnecessary? Okay, this is the heart of the book. I want you to take a screenshot or write this down, take a picture with your phone. What's the one thing I can do such that by doing it, everything else will be easier or unnecessary? Okay, and so you answer that question, and then you find out what your number one priority is. Remember Gary with the world's largest and most successful real estate company? That's what he was doing with his team, and you can do that with your team and for your own life. It's very important to do this. This is called the extreme Pareto. Let's say you have 25, could be 25,000, or it could be 25 million different items that you have to do. So you want to take 20% of those, okay? Then it gets down to, if it's just 25 items on your to-do list, that gets down to 5. You take 20% of that, and that gets down to 1. That gets down to your one thing. So you see the progression and how this works, right? Let me give you an example. So first of all, before we go to a personal example, the way Gary did it to become the world's largest and best, most successful real estate company is, he said he did a long list of tasks that they could do. And he said, finally, after they did that exercise that you saw, and the exercise that we're going to do here on a personal basis, they did it on the professional and the corporate side. And he said, I need to write a best-selling book. So he wrote a book, Millionaire Real Estate Agent. Okay. And so that is what propelled his company by being a bestseller. All the best real estate agents read this book and became hugely successful. Then they wanted to work for Gary. Again, he was educating. He wasn't in the business of real estate. He was in the business of education. And that's what I'm giving to you with this seminar of how to think in terms of your own life and also how you lead your team so that you can experience less stress. So let's say on a personal basis, you just say, I want to run a marathon. I was talking to somebody today. They were basically, they couldn't run a block, you know? I've got a client that did the same thing. They got an app called Couch Potato to 5K, okay? And that's what they did. They did these individual steps, but this is what the goal was. Run a marathon, you brainstorm all the things that you could do, you take 20% of those, and then you prioritize those. What's number one? So number one is select a running regime. Remember what we do. What's the one thing I can do such that by doing it makes everything else easier or unnecessary? That's the way we prioritize. It's not sequential. It's thinking in terms of the importance. And I know that sentence is written really kind of in a weird way, but it's written in a way to force you to come up with a great answer, a very specific and a very powerful answer. Okay. So next you bring it over, select running regime. Then you brainstorm all the things that you could do to select a running regime. And then what you do is you ask the focusing question, what's the one thing I can do such that by doing it makes everything else easier or unnecessary? And that's time block my training schedule. You move that over, time block training schedule. then you brainstorm all the different things there, and then you prioritize and you find and you come up with the last thing, which is coordinate with an experienced running partner or coach. Coordinate with an experienced running partner or coach. Okay, that's the one thing. Now, I would say that taking that even to a step next, even beyond that, going to the place of what's the one thing I can do to coordinate with an experienced running partner or coach? Well, for me, a guy that was 2 doors down from me whenever we lived in Charlotte, he was a marathon runner. So I would call him up, Rick, I'd pick up the phone. So that's the thing I would do, pick up the phone and dial his number. Or maybe it's calling a running club and asking who could be a coach or someone that you could have as an accountability partner. Or maybe it's getting an app. I don't know what that looks like for you, but that was the one thing for this person because they knew that they had to have that accountability with a coach or accountability partner to be able to follow through on their commitment. That's what happened with my client that I was coaching on another level, but they decided to run a marathon and they rolled that into. I was very proud of them because they actually brought other people along with them as they were being proactive. So they were modeling things for their own life, but it transformed their family's life and also people around them. So create your own success list now. I would ask that of all those things that you've captured, as we've been going through here, I'm going to give you about 20 seconds to go ahead and just write all those things down and then put little asterisks by the ones that you know that you should do, okay? And then I want you to ask that focusing question. I'm going to bring it back up so that you know what you are going to do, your one thing as a result of finishing this workshop. So I don't want it to just be a webinar where you're passive about it. I want you to actually get involved in doing this. So here's the focusing question. What's the one thing I can do such that by doing it, everything else will be easier or unnecessary? And I'll give you just a few seconds to do that and choose your one thing. Okay, now let's keep going. Okay, so now that we've created our success list and we have our one thing, our lead domino, if you will, okay, the thing that you're going to do whenever you get off of this webinar, I'd like for you to do this, is continue that habit daily. Continue that as a habit daily, okay? We even do it for our family on Saturdays when we have our work days to do housework, to do all the things that need to be done on Saturday. And our kids do it, our 6-year-old daughter and my 9-year-old daughter. And hopefully I'm teaching them and modeling for them, hey, it's important to choose the one thing priority, and then we all choose what that is so that we can make sure that they become disciplined and proactive in being able to do the things that they know they need to do as well. And also, just like Gary Keller did, have your team do it as well. Whenever you have your team huddles, ask them, what's the one thing you can do such that by doing it, what are you going to have done before the next huddle? The one thing that will make our practice fulfill that purpose, that goal, and our purpose. So you've got a purpose statement that from that flows a goal, a one-year goal, and then out of that you do your daily habits, and it becomes a very simple practice to get to where you're wanting to go, because it's just like that moonshot that we saw with the domino. You're working backwards to accomplish what you want to see happen in your practice, okay? We're going to talk about that more. So what is your lead domino personally? I'd like for you to write it down and circle it and say, this is what I'm going to do whenever I get off this webinar. I'm going to go ahead and take this, or maybe I'm going to take a step of texting somebody if it needs to be my spouse, whatever that looks like. And it might not be something just in your practice. It might be something else that's in your personal life that you want to transform as well. So we call your lead domino your one thing. And so what we do with that, and I'm going to show you in a second about how do we make that into a habit, okay? So I'm going to give you a little bit broader thing, because just because the coronavirus has shut down businesses, your one thing might be to focus on another area of your life other than in your practice. And I want to share with you the 7 areas of my life and my one thing in each one of them to give you thought, okay? And the reason I say that is, let me tell you a story. I went to my dentist, and he referred me to an oral surgeon that was really well recognized throughout the United States. He's on the board of one of the really big dental groups, and he's very well respected. And so my dentist gave him the name and gave me his name. And I went in there and I said, hey, this is what I'm doing. I'm helping Dennis with work-life balance. He said, that is so important. He said, I'm on the board of this and I'm not going to mention it. And he said, it's just really so vital for Dennis to get this because there's so much, acting out, of alcoholism and suicide and different things like that. The stress levels are huge. And I'm so sorry about your dad. He told me that, that you experienced that in your own family. And so you get it. And I said, well, after he told me and he referred me to different people and helped me with different speaking opportunities and things like that, I said, well, how can I serve you? How can I serve you? And he leaned back in his leather chair behind his beautiful, big, oak or mahogany, or I don't know, it was a beautiful carved desk, with the leather on top and everything. It was beautiful. And he said, you know what, Audie, there's nothing you can help me with. Our practice runs like a well-oiled machine. We work really well together. We have great interactions. Our team is great. I've got great relationships with my family, with my wife and my kids. And he wasn't bragging. It was true because I rode my bike near his office and I would see him taking his kids to school, and they looked happy in the car and everything. So, I didn't think he was doing that to be, haughty or anything like that. And so he leaned back like this and stretched. And then he looked down at me and then he saw his stomach sticking up and he patted his stomach. He patted his belly and he said, well, except for this. And he patted his belly. He said, yeah, I need to do something about that. Because we all know that abdominal fat is going to really be some of those things that kill us, And so maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's your health. Maybe it's your relationship with, like my friend David. Maybe it's an estranged relationship with somebody in your family. Maybe it's your spouse, whatever that looks like. So for my spiritual life, my one thing is this. It is my morning ritual. And what that looks like is I spend time on my app, in my Bible app, and it's called YouVersion. And it's a really cool app because it allows me to have interactions with others. I can invite people to come in and do a plan together with me on this Bible app. And so that's really cool. So that's my spiritual aspect. And then I talk to Jesus and I pray daily. I have a gratitude list. I do things like that and journal as well. And then in my physical area of life, I eat a green smoothie every day. So I try to do that consistently. I haven't been as much during the quarantine, but that is really what I do for health. And then for my personal life, what I do is, down here in Pinehurst, they don't have a lot of mountain bike trails, but they've got this great place out near the reservoir that I go ride my mountain bike through the woods. And that's what I do. That actually becomes a keystone habit that I'll share with you guys about. It actually becomes a spiritual experience, a physical experience because it's good for my health, and also a personal experience for me to be out there kind of really connecting spiritually and with God and everything like that. Key relationships. I have one-on-one dates with my leading ladies, which is my wife and my two girls, my 6-year-old, my 9-year-old. For my job, it is around really calling my 5 Dream 100 a day. So I just consistently call people that I know are people that I can serve at the highest level. For my business, it's developing funnels that I can help people, reaching more people than just a few that I can do with coaching, but to reach 1,500 plus dentists at one time. So that's how I do that from a business perspective with what I do on that level. For my finances, it's Dave Ramsey. And whether you like him or you hate him, we do his 7 baby steps. They're very simple steps to be able to move through to get to financial peace. So that'll give you an idea. And this is what it looks like for my 411, which is 4 weeks, 1 year, and 1 month. So you see at the top, again, remember, think in terms of moonshot. So my moonshot is my 2020 goal is still the same. It's 200,000 touches to serve 1,507 dentists with work-life balance. Okay, just redid this April 10th. So, but it's still very much the same. On the personal side, because if we don't take care of our bodies, we're not going to be able to do anything within our practice or within our business or with our family. We've got to take care of ourselves first, put the oxygen mask on ourselves first. So my morning ritual, 336 times, you see that, mountain biking 240, dates with my leading ladies 48 times. Then you go down from a monthly perspective and down to a weekly perspective. And then I have it daily scheduled into my calendar. And I'll show you what that looks like. On the business side, 1,200 touches to serve my Dream 100, to do an interview with them. So I interview them on my Dental Work-Life Balance live show. And then I also send that out to other people within my groups that I have these private groups that I serve them as a mastermind group to help them grow their practices and accomplish what they want in their lives. So 200,000 clicks to the summit. Okay, this is the Dental Work Life Summit that I've created to make it evergreen. We did it back in November 2019, but I want to give it to other people for them to be able to experience it, to dentists to be able to do that. And then 48 dental work-life balance workshops. So, had to do that differently. Usually I do them live, but now I'm doing them virtually. So just like what you're experiencing now. Then I go down and I break those down. So I hope that gives you clarity on what I do, that this can be a very simple plan that everybody can understand. And then next, what's your lead domino? So I want you to think in terms of what's your lead domino. So if you're having a hard time thinking about it, don't worry about it. We're just doing good enough. It's just like whenever you went out with your spouse before they became your spouse, we do things to date. And what that means is you didn't get married on the first date, right? You dated them over time. So it's taken me a while to figure out what my lead dominoes are, or my one things in those 7 areas of life. But just choose one to work on. And then we're going to talk about how you create that in an easy way of making it so that it's easy to accomplish and that it becomes really something that you do on autopilot. So what is your one thing? I'd like for you to write that down, okay? Next, we're going to talk about the next law of success. So I look forward to having you back shortly.